What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Halftime with Bizzy, and thank you all for joining me for another week. We're back on the Friday schedule. We did last Monday with Kixan. Thank you all for the support on that podcast as well. That was a very huge one. But moving along, DarfMike is joining us today, and DarfMike is a guy who wears many hats in the esports industry for Counter-Strike, and it was a pleasure to get to bend his ear and talk about his really cool backstory on kind of before Counter-Strike as a whole even. So I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff that we talked about today, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Yeah, we'll catch you guys on the outro. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the Kixan episode from last week if you didn't get to already. And yeah, catch you on the outro.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, we're good, man. How are you? I mean, you had Rivals Fort Worth, and then following you had IEM Atlanta, and then now you're back home finally. How was the past couple weeks been for you?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, Atlanta was just from home, but I'm in Europe now, so I was working some pretty scuffed hours,
Oh, okay.
which was an interesting challenge because my girlfriend's parents were visiting too. So trying to do some stuff with them, and then just shipping a little, little, little sleep deprived. But
Yep.
we do what we can.
I guess that comes
That's
with that
life.
line of work too, right? Especially close to the
Yeah,
major, very little sleep.
yeah. Take work when you can get it.
So, usually I like to start off the podcast with the typical question of like, how did you get into Counter-Strike? But tell me a little bit about being a crew member working on boats and getting into boat racing, because that's something that I don't know if any of my previous guests have had the same kind of experience about. So, I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah. I have a pretty eclectic working background. Yeah, so the the sailboat thing is I did grow up sailing with my dad. Nothing too serious, but just like, that was his hobby. So he would drag the kids out on the boat with him, and we had this tiny little 21 footer, 23 footer on the Chesapeake Bay that like worked when my brother and I were like 4 and 7 and would not have worked if we were much larger than that. So we sailed around. And I grew up learning a little bit there, but I really fell in love with it in well, sort of college. I had left college for a leave of absence, and I was looking for work. And I was living in Annapolis with my folks, and there were these two giant sailing schooners in the harbor, the Woodwinds. They're 74-foot schooners. A schooner is a boat that has two masts, where the foremast is shorter than the aft mast, two or more masts. But they took passengers out on sails around the harbor, tourists out for like 2 hour chunks. And I walked up and asked for a job, and they put me on those boats. And that's really when I fell in love with sailing and fell in love with the lifestyle there, and got more and more into it, and started doing some racing with them and some racing with other boats, and did some racing with my dad. Once he retired, he bought a boat, and that's what he spends all of his time on and doing. And yeah, just really love it. Really love the sailing side of things. And that was my life before esports. I was working on a boat. I wound up working at a sailing goods company for a while, which was the job I had when I got into casting. And yeah, I don't get as many opportunities to get out on the water as I'd like to now, because that happens with life. But whenever
Yeah.
I get a chance, I take it.
And I mean, if you do go back to, sailing or whatever, like that's the perfect way to kind of like break your career off from like you just enjoying your spare time. Like just go out on the water and just like, no phone, no nothing, just enjoy the scenery and just being kind of like disconnected for a little bit. Probably a pretty sick feeling.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It really is nice. Like when I do longer trips, if you're away from the shore, you literally don't have phone signal, so you just throw that thing in the drawer for whatever
Yeah.
the week that you're going to be on the boat, and it is really nice to be able to disconnect that hardcore. It's something that I really value, and that helps reset me and center me a lot, and it is a really nice escape. It's wonderful. The saying is like a bad day on the water is still better than a good day on land. It's a nice escape for sure.
Beautiful. And now tell me a little bit about how you got into Counter-Strike, because I think I remember you talking in the past about getting into it a little bit late, like around maybe 2015, trackpad gaming on the Mac with CSGO and
Yeah.
TF2. Like, I think a lot of us can relate to stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about how you got into Counter-Strike and how your interest got, your whole world just kind of started being Counter-Strike after a while.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I compared to a lot of people in broadcast, I'm a super late adopter. I got in and go. I think I started playing in I don't remember exactly, but I was playing on a Mac laptop. It was probably like 2014, 2013. And yeah, my early PC gaming experience was on a Mac playing on a trackpad, like um, playing TF2, playing CS. In TF2, I could really only be a sniper because goddamn, I could not track anything on that trackpad. Wound up getting like a shitty Bluetooth mouse from Best Buy or whatever, and that enhanced my abilities a lot, as you might imagine. Um, so yeah, that's how I got into it. Then I played CS. I had the orange box on like a 360, but CS was stupid on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mostly that was just a portal machine. Um, and then yeah, that's where I got into Counter Strike, and I discovered the esport. I think I started watching in like 2015. Just had that passing interest, came across the tournaments, was like had that thought everyone has, which is holy shit, there are real tournaments for this. There's like a serious competitive space. They're making how much money? Like the prize pool is how much? And then you start watching and you're like, oh shit, I actually really love this. I remember the first tournament I watched, I was cheering for Kingwin, which at the time was like the Michael Scream roster that became G2, that became FaZe. Because I liked their logo. Like that was the first tournament I watched. I was like, I don't know, I like this logo. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And then really fell in love with it from there, and started getting into the casting side of things in 2017. But yeah, that's how I started.
And it's kind of cool to think about too. Like Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out in 2012. You got into playing the game in 2015-ish or whatever. And, or sorry, you started watching esports rather in about
Yeah,
2015, and then you started working in esports in 2017. So like that's a long time after, but it just kind of shows that you you don't need to be right from day one of Counter-Strike's existence to find your way in the scene, which I think is really
yeah.
freaking cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started watching those tournaments, I had that thought where I'm like, oh, shit, this is really cool that there's like a legit broadcast, there's presenters, there's an analyst desk, the whole 9 yards. And I definitely had that thought when I was first watching that. I was like, I bet that would be really cool to be a part of. Growing up, I'm a born bullshitter, is I think the phrase. I was a theater kid. I was a mascot in college. I've done performance in a lot of different ways over the years. I'm a yapper, to put it simply. So I always had that thought where I was like, this would be really cool. I might even, I think I might be good at this. But had no clue how you get an opportunity, how you get a chance, how you get started on that at all, really. So yeah, it took a couple of years to sort of find the in, I guess. And the in was Fragadelphia, where I just saw a Reddit post that was like talking about Frag 10 that Rob, one of the producers, had put up. The producer had put up. And there was one line in it where he mentioned, we'll do open caster tryouts. And I messaged him and said, what does that mean? He said, well, if you come to the event, we'll put you on a mic. And if you suck, we'll take you off the mic. And if you don't suck, you could stay on. And so I walked into that event and I asked to try casting, and that's how I got started.
Wow. And I know in terms of Counter-Strike tournaments like Fragadelphia, it's a very important thing for NA, but it's
Yeah.
not like, Rivals Fort Worth or I Am Atlanta, you know what I mean? But still to be involved in like that type of atmosphere with like players and casters, like everybody's there. Like there's so much going on. I'm curious, especially after me going to Rivals and having that experience there and everything
Yeah.
like that. It was really overwhelming. But was this kind of you work in Fragadelphia? Was this like a holy shit pinch me moment? Like how did you kind of process all of that mentally?
To be honest, no, I don't know that I think so. This was Frag 10, right? This was January 2017. This was Freezadelphia, in that they had it in a warehouse in January that didn't have an HVAC system
Oh,
because so the old location for Nerd Street and for the Fragadelphias was this place on 908 North 3rd Street. I could say that people have been there. Plenty of people have been there. They're not there anymore. It's a cafe now. Um, and this guy owned a warehouse down the street and somehow had gotten connected and been like, oh, you should use my warehouse as the venue. And they were like, great, that's awesome. No one really thought to figure out if the place had heating. It did not. it was snowing. It was fucking frigid. It was January in Philadelphia. There was snow on the ground, and this warehouse was freezing. And so people were playing in winter coats, fully bundled up, gloves on, stuffing hand warmers into their gloves, stuffing hand warmers into their headsets just to keep warm during it.
Oh
Uh, y-
my god.
like you can go back and watch the broadcast. The A stream was like topical, Scrawny and Bach, and they're all just fully bundled up casting this thing. It was wild. So yeah, I think walking in, I kind of, I walked in, I didn't really know who to talk to, so I walked in, I bought like a spectator pass. I went, and I sat down, I was watching the games for a little bit. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really know anyone. I had no connections. I hadn't watched a Fragadelphia before turning up on their door. Um, and then eventually I worked up the courage to go talk to somebody and be like, hey, somebody on Reddit said there'd be caster tryouts. They're like, I don't know, go to this building, go to 908 and talk to this guy. And so I did, and they threw me on there. And my first game I was casting with Bach, and then I cast a map with this guy Holden Nedlaw was his tag, which is just Holden backwards. He used to do a lot of the broadcast stuff for ESEA back in the day. He walked away from esports at one point, and to my knowledge, last time I talked to him, very happy with that decision. So he's off somewhere in the world. If you listen to this somehow, Holden, shout outs to you. And then MCE, a guy who was a CS player at that time, wound up being a coach for a while, was part of that SOAR roster that made Pro League. He's now in Valorant. He's running the collegiate program for Maryville, I think. Had some time as C9's coach in Valorant. Has had a few stints over there. But yeah, I just did those games, and it was like, okay, afterwards talking to everybody, being like, did I do good? Like, was that good? And they're like, yes, yeah, no, obviously you knew, enough. Go talk to our producer. Went chatted with Rob, who was the producer at the time, and he said, well, someone told you to talk to me, so you must be pretty good. Um, and they started bringing me back for their smaller events, and then going to all the events with them, and that's where it all snowballed.
That's awesome. And I'm really curious on how, it's one thing to be passionate and, to be doing that is awesome, but to take it to the next level and to take it where you ultimately have taken it to today, how do you even crack that door? You go from cracking the door open to kicking the door straight off the hinges. Like, how did you do that?
It took a long time. I mean, I think that my journey was a much slower burn than you see with some people, right? Everyone has a different path. The reality is that what we do is so weird and new and niche that everyone's gonna have a little bit of a different path to it. Some people have meteoric rises. Some people take the long road. Um, and so for me, I was doing the Fragadelphias. I was casting those. I was doing some other lands that the Frag guys were involved in or that other people were involved in. I did these DC area esports lands with good old DC Dan, the DC man, um, uh, which were, it was me bringing all of my own equipment, setting up, fully running the broadcast from my equipment, using my microphones, my monitors, my everything. They provided a table and power, and just casting the whole LAN, 2 days, whole weekend, whole 9 yards, start to finish. Maybe people would come down and sit with me as guests. I'd drag people in just to give myself some sanity, but I ran the whole thing, 12, 14 hours, whatever it wound up being, start to finish. Um, and I think I got paid like it was like $100 for the weekend for the event kind of thing. I one time I we got done with it. We wrapped. I mean, no one had any money, right? So we wrapped the event, and I'm packing up, and I'm so fucking tired and delirious, and I've got work the next day. And I go and I'm picking up and I'm putting my stuff back in the car, and I go in and I grab one of my monitors and I lift the monitor up by the stem, and the damn screen
Oh,
comes right off the
no.
stem, falls and shatters, and I'm just looking at this like $200 monitor, right? Not even a great monitor, but $200, and it's twice the amount of money that I'm getting paid for the weekend, and I'm just thinking, shit. Well, all right, this it is what it is.
That whole weekend
Um,
boiled down to half of that monitor.
yeah,
Man.
but yeah, those were the experiences. Those were the early ones, man. And then I started working. I mean, more and more. Nerd Street sort of professionalized their circuit. I was doing all their events. Those I was getting paid for. Not a substantial amount of money, but I was getting paid. I was working events. I was traveling. I was getting put up and fed. And then I did the ESEA Next Big Caster Challenge. Was the really big breakthrough of making a lot more money out of that. There was ESEA. They brought it back, right? Buckethead just won this season.
Yep.
Shout out to Buckethead. But for a few seasons there, it was, um, ESEA broadcasts weren't really necessarily that big of a thing. There was the Mountain Dew League broadcast, but beyond that, a lot of games went uncovered. They were open IP. You streamed the games on your own, and then someone whittled that down to a pool of, I think it was like 10 people at the end, the finalists, and then the community voted on the finalists to figure out who won. I actually, the first season that I applied for it got rejected fully,
Oh wow.
which I was kind of salty about at the time. I got some really good feedback from Mark, who was doing the selection at that time, and he explained why he rejected me. And I was like, I can be a bit of a stubborn guy. So at the time, I was like, and then I thought about it for like a day, and I was like, yeah, he's right. Yeah, okay, I can learn from this. Which I'm grateful for. It's that early feedback, those early moments are like really huge in developing. So then my second time I got to the finalist stage, wound up. There were three of us in the finalists, and it was me, Magic Helmet, and Insomnia. And frankly, I don't think I would have won the voting if Insomnia hadn't dropped out, because
Oh, he dropped
he
out.
dropped out. Yeah, he dropped out for one reason or another. At the time, he had a much bigger following than I did. He streamed, he had a bigger stream, all those kind of things. And for better or worse, obviously, a fan vote is a popularity contest. It's always going to be. That's just the nature of the thing. But he withdrew himself, sort of stopped doing the casting thing more or less at that point, decided it wasn't what he wanted. I don't know the exact circumstances around it. He's popped up in my stream every once in a while since, we chat. Nice guy. But yeah, he withdrew. Stroke of fortune sometimes, works out for you. Sorry for him, but they wound up bringing both me and Magic Helmet out to the event, and then doing a vote while we were casting at the event, and I wound up winning it. Now the idea was that if you won it, you then got hired onto the broadcast for the next season, like you became part of the paid group. They wound up
Okay.
hiring both of us, so
Oh,
winning it maybe
perfect.
didn't make that much of a difference. But I got to be the next big caster. And that's really where I started making regular money. Was doing the ESEA broadcasts, and then through that, I started doing some of the qualifiers, doing some remote work, doing like casting like Katowice B stream. I did at one point during COVID, um, various different events, qualifiers, B streams, that kind of thing, and then eventually ESL brought me on for some of those remote dream hacks during the COVID eras, where I was hosting those, and then they wound up bringing me out for a studio for, I think it was called IEM Fall, because this was the COVID era when nothing had locations, and it was an RMR for it would have been the Stockholm major, I think, at the time,
Okay.
and that's where I started getting the studio work.
And the studio work had to have been like the real like holy shit, like we made it. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
especially for ESL. I mean, this is no disrespect to any other TOs, but I mean ESL is just like for me it's top of the top. Like the money that they put into their production and their overall product as a whole, like wow. They really do a great job. So to be able to see that in person for the first time, I could only imagine it was probably absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I mean, it was really a surprise that I wound up getting the event, right? Because this was COVID. We were coming out of COVID. I think it was 2021, fall of 2021, and I just really didn't expect. I'd had a few other opportunities. I did a Beyond the Summit remote, where
Okay.
I filled in for Fifth Lauren on Thursdays because he had some prior obligation on Thursdays, and so I got to shoot the shit with Richard Lewis and Harry and Hugo. And that one had, I think, raised my profile a lot. I told an insane story about my brother and Peter Yarrow that went just a little viral, raised my profile a touch. But yeah, getting that studio gig was a really delightful surprise. It was 2 weeks in Poland. We did the CIS RMR and we did the NA RMR. And so for the NA one, we were working like nocturnal hours in Poland, which was kind of a crazy experience because in Katowice, Poland, there's like one place that's open past a certain hour. So every day we would just wind up going there for dinner because it was the only thing open after we got off shift at like 4 or 5 a.m. or whatever. Um, Shout out to the Ambasada. It was a trip. It was very surreal. I was absolutely loving it. I was working a desk with Hawka and Wolfie, and then Laz came in for the second week to replace Wolfie, and it was just like it was holy shit. On the other stream, it was Stunna and Yanko and Dinko, I think, and it was that was definitely a holy shit moment. That was like all right, we're actually doing the thing.
Yeah,
This is the dream. We're starting to live the dream. Getting actually paid a decent chunk of money for an invoice as well. Like that was a real jump.
for sure. And the thing that I think is super important, I sound like a broken record to some people, but it's just sometimes you got to think about the struggle of we've seen in the past, like, certain broadcast talent haven't been able to find work. The first person that comes to my head is Anders. This season, Anders has been doing really well. He's been working a lot, which is great to
Yeah.
see. But he's had trouble at certain points trying to find work, and nothing in this line of work, like, there's no contract saying, "Yeah, we're gonna use you for the next 5 years." To my understanding, it's kind of just like they pick and choose who they want to work with, right? Like, it's very competitive in that regard.
Yeah, some TOs have done longer contracts at times, but I haven't been on one certainly. So yeah, no, for most people it is event to event, and that is definitely the most nerve-wracking, terrifying aspect of this job. Is that at the end of the day, the only feedback that really matters is whether you get hired for the next one, right? And you often don't know if you're going to be until it depends on the TL. Sometimes at the beginning of the season. Sometimes at the beginning of the year. Sometimes a month out. Sometimes a week out. Sometimes so for example that IEM fall event, I got asked on a Tuesday and I flew on a Thursday.
Whew.
Um, like that was my turnaround was like 2 days. I'm sure I wasn't the first choice. Somebody dropped out, right? But like you got to take those opportunities when they come up.
Yes.
So life is very unstable, and yeah, you can have a guy like Anders who is such a storied name, but he just kind of I mean, he's talked about this a lot, but I think for a variety of reasons, he sort of his focus slipped to a degree, and maybe he got a little comfortable and complacent, and then all of a sudden the calls stopped coming and the emails stopped coming, and it's like, holy shit, what happened?
Yeah.
And then it's like a huge shock to the system, and it's not necessarily that he's done anything wrong or that he's pissed anybody off, but it's just like other people have come up and have created competition for those roles, and it's a hard industry. And so yeah, it is cool to see Anders get back into these opportunities and really um, bust his ass to get those shots back. Because yeah, he's super talented, hardworking, great dude, fun dude to see at events as well. Has some crazy side hobbies, but fascinating character. So yeah, it is the reality of this industry. Is one day you can just wake up and the calls stop coming, and that's
That's
not
scary.
not such a fun state of existence to live under.
Yeah, and the thing that I really like about you is your hustle toward casting has led you to even take it steps further with being arena host, a desk host, and you're sorry, stage host. So, like, how did you kind of I know you have, like, a history with, speaking and being like
Sure.
a person in public or whatever, but how did you take it to a point where you're like, okay, now I'm going to go interview people in the arena, and we're going to be a character for the broadcast in the arena, and having a big giant chicken and throwing ropes at it trying to lasso the chicken. Like, how was this kind of like a part of your plan to maybe cement yourself in numerous ways to be like attractive for a TO?
I think I am not always the best at planning long term per se. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. I think for me, I've always been eager to take the opportunities that come, and I think that versatility is one of my strongest assets. Like I think that I've very much become a Swiss Army knife. I look at a guy like Moses as a role model, where
Yeah.
Moses Jason's filled a million different roles over the years, a million different aspects of a broadcast. He's always been that guy where he can be the glue or the Swiss Army knife to fill in the spot that you need. And I looked at that as a he's certainly been a role model and an inspiration. But also just like again, this is kind of my skill set, right? Like I said, I was a mascot in college. Arena hosting is the closest thing to mascotting since, right? Like you're embodying the energy and enthusiasm of a crowd and hyping them up and getting them ready and getting them eager and excited for the game. And I love it. I really love it. I love all the different aspects of what I get to do. Sometimes people ask me like, "What's your favorite?" or like, "What would you do if you could only do one?" That's a really hard question to answer because I do genuinely enjoy having the versatility that I do and having the opportunity to do a lot of different jobs. Um, and like maybe to some degree that hurts me that I don't just pick a niche and really brand myself, but like shit's fun, man. It's really fun to go from doing a desk hosting gig to doing stage hosting to doing arena to doing a cast. Like they're all different aspects. Interviewing, they're kind of all different muscles, and it's enjoyable to get to work all the different ones. You're asking how I started on that path. The reality is, I took the work that was available with hosting, and then when did I do the first arena gig? That
Like,
must have been Dallas, I think. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 4 years ago at this point.
and like when
Uh,
you were casting, did they just go, "Hey, we need someone to fill in this position. You're already here doing the event. Would you like to do it?" Like, did they see something in you?
no, that was so that one specifically, my first opportunity with it was like Jackson Wolf, who you might have just seen. They did the POV video of him putting the medals on in Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a guy who he used to work for ESEA. We sort of came up together with doing the global challenges together. He made the jump up to ESL. He does like product lead for different events at ESL. At this point, I'm sorry if I get these wrong, Jackson, but I believe he's lead on Pro League and uh, Atlanta. He was Dallas, and I think he's got EWC at this point from a CS perspective, and I think there's probably one more that I'm forgetting. He wears a lot of hats, but he, was somebody that I knew well and knew my skill set and needed somebody and wanted to up the stakes of the arena show because we both come from a U.S. perspective of like sporting events can be crazy hype. Like 90% of the entertainment for the not 90%, let's say 50% of the entertainment for an in-person audience comes when the game's not live, right?
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
want to lean into that, you want to amp them up, and you want to make sure that everybody in the house is having a damn good time. And so we both talked about this and had a lot of ideas for how to do it. And so he was the one who first put me into those kind of spots. And then from there, other events wanted to bring me in. I started doing it with Blast as well, for the Royal Arena at first. And then they didn't do an arena show for a while. Now we're bringing it back this year. We're building it up. Um, and it's sort of become a little bit of a specialty of mine, which is a funny niche to be occupying. For sure. It's a lot of fun. It's a very raucous form of broadcast work in that like it's all how do you react with the crowd, how do you interact with this person, it's all improv. Like there's only so much you can prep,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
magic's going to be in the live action.
For sure. And I just think the whole part about having a bit of a variety, like it's not like you're going to work every day and you're doing the same thing and it's just like, okay, shut that little switch off and go on autopilot. Like you have like so many different avenues that you travel down with your line of work, and I think that's just a really cool angle about, just what you do as a whole.
Yeah, I love it. I think that we as humans are really good at normalizing the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
um But I think that what we do in broadcast work, or what I get to do in broadcast work, is so extraordinary and wild that it's nice to always have those change ups and to just get that kick in the pants to remind myself that this is an insane thing that someone pays me for. Like it's nuts to me that this is a job, and really just helps keep me appreciating it and loving how wild it gets.
So, what would you say is probably the hardest part about your jobs? Like when it comes down to traveling, I know sometimes it might not be as much prep work, but depending on the case, prepping, interacting with maybe players or people in the arenas or whatever. I mean, there's a lot that physically and mentally goes into this kind of job. So I'm just kind of curious on what are the most difficult parts of this job, if you could even point a finger at something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's plenty. Like, it's not an easy job. If it was an easy job, everybody would do it because it's really fucking fun, right? Like, it's a very specialized set of skills. And there's a lot. I would say that the things that make the job most difficult to me are the things that come outside of actually doing the work when the camera's live, right? Like that's a pleasure,
Yeah.
casting, hosting, working with live crowds, working with audiences is always amazing. It's so electric. It gives you so much energy, and like it's just such a joy to see people having joy. So that part to me is really fun. It takes effort and it's hard, but in a very satisfying, enjoyable way. I think the challenges come from everything around it, and I think that's probably true for most people in esports. Like the travel you mentioned, like that can be very difficult. You spend a lot of time on planes. You just have to get good at planes. You spend a lot of time away from home. Sometimes you just want to be home, with your dog, with your girlfriend, hanging out, playing video games, not worrying, having routine. You have to be able to establish a routine in a new place very constantly. In some places, it's easier than others, but sometimes you're in a beautiful city and you can go out and explore. Sometimes you're in a chain hotel next to a convention center with nothing around except like fast food, if that. You just have to be adaptable. Um, so those are the challenges I would say. I think the other one is something we've already touched on, which is the uncertainty, right? Like, I think that is the biggest challenge of this life. Is like you're not master of your own schedule unless you're one of the very established guys where you can essentially confirm your schedule a year out. Maybe there's some other stuff that pops up, but you more or less know what you want to do a year out. That's not a privilege I have yet. And so the uncertainty is definitely the hardest part of just not knowing what your next month is necessarily going to look like, and B, not knowing what your next year is going to look like or where exactly the money's going to be coming from, and staying flexible in that circumstance. I think that is definitely the hardest part of the job for me.
And do you think this is something that could kind of change in the industry one day? Or, I
Yeah.
mean, it definitely should change. It sounds like. I mean, I don't think you should have to worry about everything that comes with doing this line of work. And then in the back of your head being like, well, if this is the last event that I do, if they don't hire me for next month, do I have enough money for everything next month? Like, I think that's like super fucked up. So, do you think that this is something that will change in the whole system, or do you think it's just going to only apply to the very well established people in the broadcast talent pool that we have?
I think there's always going to be a bridge of, more certain and less certain, right? Um, but I do think that naturally over time, like I don't think anyone is intentionally putting people into this state. I think
No,
it's
no.
more just a facet of the way events work and the way things work. Um, but I do think that over time, as the industry matures, as there's hopefully, knock on wood, continues to be more money and more events and more eyeballs on, um, I think you're already going to see a degree of it next year where we have even more conflicts between TOs. And the reality is that the more conflicts there are between TOs, the more incentivized those TOs are to lock people up further ahead of time, just so that they don't wind up not getting the people that they want for their show. Um, so I think there's that aspect of things. I think that just naturally, like the reality is also, to a degree, we control our destinies. The better I am at my job, the more desirable it is for somebody to lock me up ahead of time so that they make sure they have me. So I think it is a shifting aspect of it. I think there's always going to be a degree of it. It's just a passion industry and B, an entertainment industry, right? Like people who are coming up through the ranks, like are always going to have more uncertainty than people who are more established and have better connections and better existing working relationships with their employers. So to answer your question, yes and no. I do think somewhere down the line, 10, 20 years, something like that, you'll see more established broadcasts in terms of having, and we're already seeing a shift to this, more studio shows, maybe having like one location, a la what say a Riot does, where you try and localize the people that work on your broadcast to one location so that you can run more of your things out of one location, that kind of thing. I think that's somewhere down the line. I don't know if short term that's going to happen, in the next 5 years or even the next 10.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And on the other side of the coin, the good parts about your job. I know there's probably a lot of stuff that you could enjoy with this type of work, but if it's, the cultures that you get to experience traveling all around the world, especially in Europe, if it's
Yeah.
just interacting with fans or players, if it's just hanging out with, the other broadcast talent that you're friends with, like what is your favorite part about this job if you could put your finger on one or even a couple things?
I mean, a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of different aspects of it. The work itself is so fulfilling, right? Like putting on a show that's watched by tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people is so satisfying. Being part of that live broadcast environment, live broadcast in general is such a drug because it's so unpredictable. And if you're casting, it's all about the game. You're just loving the game. If you're on desk, maybe something unexpected happens. Maybe a player comes up and trolls your broadcast. Maybe you miss a cue or something happens. It's always just constantly dealing with the situation as it lies, even in the more controlled environments. Um, as an interviewer, it's so much just about having a conversation, learning things about the players, whatever they're going to be bringing. And as an arena or a stage host, it's just so much about the crowd, what they're giving you, what the energy is, how you can build the storyline or build the energy or build the hype. So the work itself is always going to be first and foremost. It's just so much fun, right? Like what we do is at the end of the day a delight. And I'm still very much that theater kid where like being part of an ensemble, being part of a production when it goes well, when it hits, is so satisfying. So I love that aspect of things. I think there's lots of others. Like the travel is a delight. I think that it's for me the travel can be super draining if you just go into it with an attitude of like we're doing the work, not going to do anything outside of it. But often we're in beautiful places around the world, and especially when we get to explore new ones, taking the time to find a little cafe that you like, go and see a museum, go and see a local monument or something, find some restaurants. I'm very food motivated. I love food. I love eating. That's something that I share with a number of people in the broadcast. So I'm always looking for restaurants that I find interesting. I'll go out with different people to go try new things and talk about food and enjoy that. And that's something that gives me a lot of fulfillment. That's not the work, but is sort of outside of the work. I also think that just by nature of what we do, most of our colleagues are fun people, by and large, right? Like you bring exciting, interesting, entertaining, smart people together, and yeah, hanging out's a good time. That the hang is a good time. We've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering at events lately.
Yeah.
That's been fun. Um, or doing some, grabbing a beer or checking something out or going for a walk. Like this, yeah, it is a lot of fun. Being at an event is a lot of fun. It's kind of all consuming in a very delightful way.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, obviously, I'm not a member of Broadcast Talent or anything, but when I got to go to Blast Rivals, and at the end, thank you for what you did for mentioning the Coolio podcast on the
Oh yeah, of
stream.
course, man.
That was fucking wicked. Like, I got off the plane, immediately, I look at my DMs and someone messaged me that. I was like, yo, what's going on, bro?
I think there's also an emotional element that we have to consider. I was watching Coolio's interview with Bizzy recently on the halftime show, and one of the things that he mentioned that they've been learning through their last few events is the emotional regulation, right? They played their first event where they sort of made a studio, they made a stage, and they were maybe too hype.
Crazy. So thank you again for that. But just getting to meet like you and like Dust and meet up with Launders again and introduce myself to Scrawny and just to talk to all of these people, Maui Snake, like everybody's just so cool. And I could only imagine like after working so many events together, it's just like kind of like a big family. Like if that's how I view it as anyway. It felt like that's kind of how it is. But it's wicked, man. It's super cool.
I relate it to being like a traveling circus in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
th- the big top goes down in one city, it pops up in another city. You might be working with a slightly different group of people. You might be working with completely different people. When you leave an event, you don't necessarily know where you're going to see somebody next, but you're probably going to see them somewhere down the line. So it is kind of this traveling circus of like tent goes up, you hang out with a bunch of people, tent goes down, goes on to the next one. Um, and so there is definitely that aspect of it of like, oh, see you in a month, see you in a couple months, see you in years. I mean, there's some people where I thought I was going to see them in like a month, and then for one reason or another, I haven't seen them in years. We just haven't crossed paths on a broadcast. But it is kind of like that. I mean, again, it's like a performance. It's like being in a member of a cast. Like you do get very close with people and spend a lot of time together.
Yeah. And the one thing that I think about too, I don't know, I think about all these weird angles. I feel like maybe not a lot of maybe casual fans, I guess, or whatever, think about stuff like this. But I think about, after a while, like, yeah, especially when you're younger, like traveling and doing all of this all the time, you can live with that. But after a while, if you start to get a little bit older, that kind of wears off and it ends up becoming more of kind of just weighs on you a certain way after you've done it for
Mm.
so many years. I think of a guy like Scrawny. He said something in an interview that was really crazy to hear. He said, he was here for the end of CS:GO, and he doesn't think that he'll be here for the end of CS2. Yikes, right? Like, that hurts to hear. So, I'm just kinda curious on how you think the scene would be different or how it would look if, hypothetically speaking, some of our most well-known talent members weren't here and there was other faces replacing them. Like, it would be really different, you know what I mean? And it could look
Yeah,
different by the end of CS2.
this is a conversation Connor and I have had. I think he's going to be 70 in casting. You know, he's
I
going to be
hope
like
he
Al
is.
Michaels, going fully like senile on the broadcast, just like losing his train of thought halfway through. But I think that naturally there's going to be a degree of attrition because yeah, it's a demanding lifestyle. I was actually watching your Kickson interview earlier, and he mentioned the fact that like his best friend's getting married this summer, and he couldn't tell him he'd be there. You know, it's like those aspects of it are very difficult and do weigh on you for sure. And especially, I think the big one is kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
people are having kids, and that is hard to be away that much when you have kids, when you have young ones, and to not be a master of your own schedule. And so I think that is one that is pretty demanding on people. But the reality is that there are a lot of travel industries, and there's a lot of people who make those lifestyles work. Some of them have more predictability than we do, but like some people will age well with it and keep up with it, and some people will decide it's not the lifestyle for them and seek a change. Um, as far as who or what or when, that happens when it happens. I do think that one of the privileges that we have as Counter Strike is that we have such a long storied history
Yeah.
that we see people come up through the game who haven't existed and who are going to make their mark and are going to be presences on a broadcast or in a server or whatever. Like there's new talent coming up all the time. And we've got a legacy and a story of it. You look at a guy like a Moses. He was competing back in when he had hair, a long time ago, and he's been part of it. Took some breaks, but he's been part of the story of Counter Strike for so long, for decades at this point. We're incredibly privileged to have that. That's something that most games do not have. So I think that some people will stick around, some people will leave. It will absolutely change broadcast, right? Like you see, listening to casts, listening to a Scrawny and Launders, listening to a Sponge and Machine, listening to a Harry Hugo. You see their fingerprints all over the broadcast, and it's something
Yeah.
that is delightful to hear the different ways that they're great, the different art that they bring to the cast, the different storylines that they build, the different areas and strengths that they show, and so maybe it'll be a different duo, but I think that because of the history, because of the storied legacy of our broadcasts and of our game, if you're going to get to that top, you're going to be damn good by the time you do. And so, whoever that next duo is, whoever that next presence on the desk is, I'm sure they'll be great too.
It's hard to think about, like 10 years time, Moses, for argument's sake, since he was just, we'll pick his name out of the hat since we were just talking about him. I believe he's 40 now. Like
No,
is he? Is he not?
no, he's not. Is Jason 40? No way. No, I think
Maybe he's
I don't
39.
want to guess his age. Is he?
Okay, my bad. He's 39. He is not 40. He's not the big 4-0.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't realize Jason was 39.
He
Oh,
doesn't
looking
really look
good.
like it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was gonna say that man don't wrinkle.
But like, in another 7 years, he'll be like 46. How many
Sure.
people in the scene right now actively are traveling around the world doing this at 46? To see him, for argument's sake, knock on wood, so it doesn't happen anytime soon, but to see him not on the broadcast, that'd be crazy. Like, he's a staple, It's hard to
Yeah.
imagine some of these guys won't be here one day, like on the broadcast I'm talking. Like that's so hard. It's so hard to wrap my head around. I don't even like to. I don't want to.
I mean, all of us won't be here one day, one way or another. But as far as how long the runway is, yeah, that's hard to speak to for different people. But yeah, it's the other side of things is that like because of how rapidly the world and esports and CS shifts in general, I feel like it's tough for me to visualize more than like 2 years down the road, if
Yeah.
even that far. Like 5 years out, tough to picture. 10 years out, no clue. No
Yeah.
clue, man. What the world will be like, where I'll be, where anyone will be, to be quite frank.
Yeah. So let's talk bucket list talk, okay? So you have
Okay.
achieved a lot already. I don't really know what else you would want to achieve, but I'm curious to hear it. Do you have anything on your bucket list, or, is there stuff that you haven't done that you've always wanted to do? Is there maybe even a new role that you haven't done in esports yet that you want to do? Like, I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah. So I did my first major last year in Austin, which was an incredible place to do it. I was doing the content production and then some arena stuff, and that was amazing. That was a crazy event to be part of. That was, just a magnificent major, crazy crowd. You were there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a sick event.
Really good
So
spot
being
for a
part of a
major in
major,
NA too, by the way. Like, really good
it
spot.
was sick. It was a
Yeah.
great. I hadn't spent a ton of time in Austin as an adult, and it was a great place to be for a month in general.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
just a really nice town. So that was a trip. I would like to do many more of those. Majors are great. It's a hell of a drug. Don't get me wrong, lots of events are great, but a major is a different beast.
Oh, yeah.
So, would love to be involved in many more of those. Anyone listening, please hire me. I could do so many things. Um, Other things, at some point, I would like to get more serious back into the casting to a degree. Like, the hosting took off to such a degree that casting's taken a bit of a backseat. I've still maintained a presence doing qualifiers, doing B streams, doing online stuff. But like it is just a different beast and a different muscle. And one day I would love to cast for a legit arena audience. How that happens, I don't know. It's not exactly something I'm making happen right now myself, I would say. But somewhere down the line, if the opportunity presents itself, it's something I'd love to do. That was sort of the original dream, is casting, one of those big trophy lift moments kind of thing.
Hmm.
That's definitely a dream. Um, and then yeah, just different roles. Desk hosting a major would be sick. Stage hosting. I've done stage hosting with Dallas. Would love to get back to that somewhere down the line. Something I really enjoy as well. Something that I think is a new challenge. It's a different skill set from what I've done before, and it's something that I really enjoyed tackling. And I think year 1 to year 2 of doing it in Dallas, I think the first year there's a lot I fucked up. To be quite frank, there's a lot I watched back and was like, cringing at myself, which is always the experience watching back your own work.
Yeah.
But then the second year, I think I did a much better job with it, and I was really pleased with the work I put out there. So getting more cracks at stage hosting is something I'd really love to do. Yeah, just really, I love the work, and I'd like to continue doing it, and I'd like to continue flexing different muscles and building it up. And as far as one specific bucket list item, I don't know. I don't know. If we ever get back on terrestrial TV, that'd be cool to be part of. E
Oh,
League was
hell
like
yeah.
one of those big events that I watched and was like, God, I want to do this. And I remember being in a bar with a bunch of work colleagues from my sailing gig stuff and seeing E League reruns on the TV and being like, guys, that's what I do. Holy shit, that's on the TV in this bar we're in casual. Like, that's what I do. That's my game.
How did we ever get away from that, How is that not a meta by now? There's nothing out
Well,
there that puts that on TV, like national television? Come on. It's
yeah, I don't think
crazy.
Turner made the money they were hoping to, unfortunately. That was a sick product, though. I mean, E-League
Oh,
was
yeah.
awesome, man. Like, yeah, as a US guy, E-League was the shit. Like that was a different beast entirely. But yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know that terrestrial TV is necessarily the future for esports. I don't think it is. But if it ever happens again, it'd be cool to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And my last question for you, CAC wraps up on the 24th. At the time of recording this, it is the 21st. Navi dethroned Vitality at IEM Atlanta. Kerrigan snubbed the spot and finally gets to play back in the major this year. There's a lot of storylines and a lot of narrative leading into the IEM Cologne major that's happening in just a couple weeks, actually. So I'm curious to know, like, what's impressing you? What is something that people aren't talking about? Who were you hoping to see maybe if not win the trophy, just kind of make it far into the major? Like, what are your whole views and what are your whole thoughts on going into the major?
God, I hope an NA team does something.
Dude, I
Fuck
know.
me, rough season for NA. Um, I have some eyes on M80, right? They just got knocked out of CAC,
Mhm.
which sucks. But they've actually had some good results and some really close maps against good teams lately. Like they played Mouse, they fucked up the last map, but they played Mouse really. Okay, they fucked up 2 out of 3 maps. I'm not gonna lie. But it was a good Inferno, and they played Falcons close across 2.
Yep.
Like they've had some good results and they've had some shit results. And like I really expected M80 to take a big jump forward this season. You know, they started at the Flomland. I was very excited about them with the JBA edition, and then it just did not materialize. And NRG, I had a lot of hope and optimism for with the Grim move. Hasn't quite materialized yet. Maybe that one's we could still give that some time. Passion UA has totally fucking imploded. Apparently they're for sale, and they were
Yeah.
debatably even remotely NA at this point. Liquid has been Liquid. Was excited about them all back there, but like until further notice, Liquid is Liquid, and we just
Immediate roster change, like in a couple different spots. Like it has to happen. It's so fucking bad.
yeah. Wildcard's kind of hype. I think Wildcard
Yeah.
really surprised me very pleasantly with the peeping roster, and then I think 60 was a straight upgrade over that.
Yeah.
So I have some hope there. Like I don't know, man. I just want somebody to give us some optimism because it felt like the last year, like 25 had a lot of reasons for optimism for NA rosters.
Oh
Like young
yeah.
teams building, the Stanislaw wildcard roster did some stuff, M80 did some stuff, NRG did some stuff, and then this year it's just like backslid in a way that I really didn't expect. And I'm not particularly enjoying. So yeah, guys, if we could win some matches, something, make it through some stages of the major, that'd be sick. That'd be nice. I think Vitality's gonna win the thing again. I'm not that worried about them losing Atlanta.
No.
I don't think they're that worried. They were telling me in the interviews in Fort Worth, they're like, yeah, we've given ourselves permission to lose here and in Atlanta. Like we are not practicing. We're taking our time. We're taking a vacation. Like we're relaxed. They're like results agnostic of these next 2 events. We're gonna ramp up for the major. And it's like true to their word, that's what has happened.
Yeah.
So I think they're still going to be the murderous Vitality. But I am very hype about Navi.
It's
Makaze's legit.
exciting. Yeah. And I think the whole loss for Vitality in Atlanta, a
Mm,
lot of people want to go, oh, they lost, like, yo, they might not win the major now. I don't think it's that deep because, like you were just saying, these guys were on vacation, not practicing, and they
yeah.
still won Fort Worth. I think that speaks way higher than it does losing in Atlanta. You guys aren't practicing. Of course, you're probably going to lose, even if you're the best
Yeah,
team in the world.
they're trying to solve the same problem that Astralis did in their second year of dominance, which is how do you sustain this, right? Like
Yeah.
with all the demands of the schedule, with how brutal the travel is, with how brutal CS is in general, and how variable it is. How do you sustain this kind of dominance? And the answer that they're doing is you're finding the chunks to take time off. Which back in the day when Astralis started skipping tournaments and that kind of thing, that was controversial then as well. Then they tried that 6-man roster thing. Obviously, don't do what they did. But I think Vitality are taking good approaches to it, and I think they're being very sober-minded about it, which probably actually sucks for the rest of the scene because, you know, I think if anyone's going to manage this the whole way through, I think the way Vitality set up their staff and their support staff and the time that they're taking is seems to be a pretty healthy approach to it.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I'm kind of concerned about is Foot. I mean, Foot
Okay.
Esports, they had a very good start to the season. Bucharest, huge for them. And then
Yeah.
especially when they came to NA didn't really treat them too well. And then even at IEM Atlanta, like the tech pauses, I'm just like, man, like these guys, I want to see them do good. I want to see them have a deep run in the major. Right now, I'm a little bit concerned though.
Hey, look, my fragging goat Coolio took a map off Vitality, so
That is,
uh
yeah, that's
like, come
huge.
on now. I mean, look, I think they're the most exciting team of this year in terms of risers, right? Like
Yes,
they've
100%.
hit a huge step up. I'm really happy to see Lonks be part of that. He's a guy who I really enjoyed watching back in the Sprout days. I got to cast a lot of his games back then. Doing it was like the ESL Pro League conference that they won with Sprout. I think they won it. No, 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 no. That was For the Win won that. They beat Sprout. Okay. Ancient history. Suffice it to say, I like that Sprout team. I like Blancs there. I think, his sort of fall from grace was by his own admission, largely immaturity issues and issues on his end. So it's cool to see him get another chance at it, having learned those lessons. Um, I think that, when you start a tour without a player because of a health issue, even when that guy then comes in for the second part of it, I'd imagine he's not doing 100%.
Yeah.
Like he's dealing with I think he said a stomach ulcer,
Yeah.
which can be a pretty nagging issue. And there's, I had no idea what's going on with his health, but I'd imagine that could be a complication. And for a guy who turns himself beet red shouting in between every round, I can't imagine that's great for an ulcer. So maybe they need to get him like meditation or yoga or something. But I think that part of adjusting to this level of play that you see a lot of teams go through is adjusting to the demands of the schedule, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one thing when you're only qualifying to every third event or every fourth event, and most of your stuff you're playing at home or you're playing online. That's a different grind. The online grind is a different beast. That's what Foot was doing last year. That's what they were doing when they were Navi Junior. They'd have a few events, but mostly they were playing a million games of online CS. That's a different kind of endurance beast. But when you swap to the travel grind, to the event grind, where you're going to a different TO, the setup's different, the practice room's different, the way that you get snacks is different, the catering's slightly different. Like
Going to the new
that is
region for the first time in your life. Like, that's huge
new
too.
region. There's exciting things. Maybe you want to go out, you want to see things, you want to sightsee a little bit more than you would otherwise. Like learning all those things, adapting to all those things is really challenging for young players, even when it's just one young player in a team and they have veterans to lean on. That team doesn't have veterans to lean on, right? They're
Yeah.
all young. Bonks is the veteran, and he's like barely had that level of experience, right? Sniffed it for a little bit, kind of thing. So I think it's not the most surprising thing that they're having a dip, and I think that based on the way that they are and the way that their mentality when you talk to them in interviews and that kind of thing, I think they'll be all right in the long run. I hope they'll be
Yeah.
all right. I'm optimistic for it. I think the other side is that when they have a somewhat signature style and then other teams start thinking about them a little harder because they're, further up in the rankings, you also have to learn to adapt to that for Krabeni and Coolio to continue finding more arrows when you've become a bigger target on other teams' radars.
Okay. Alrighty. Interesting. So that was the last question I have for you. To do the outro of the podcast is pretty much the same with every guest. I like to just shine the spotlight over to the guests, and if there's anything you want to tell people that maybe are trying to, I don't want to say replicate, but follow similar footsteps that you have, you know, done in your career in terms of the
Yeah.
roles that you have in your jobs, or if there's any motivation or like motivational quotes, sorry, or any type of shout out or anything like that. If you want to close out, just say whatever you want, man. It's up. That's all you.
Yeah. If I'll take the inspiration from the if people are trying to follow in my footsteps, the reality is you're not going to. The sands of esports shift so much that the path I took doesn't exist anymore, and the path you take won't have existed when I was doing it. So my advice is get good at what you do, build your skill set. Put it out there for people to see, stream, cast, whatever it is. Take the opportunities that are afforded to you. Do good work and improve and be fun to work with. And eventually the opportunity will come. And the better you are at what you do by the time the opportunity comes, the more prepared you'll be to seize it. So that's my general advice. And then, in terms of overall shout outs, if anyone enjoyed what I said and wants to see more of me, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. I have Blue Sky. I'm like the only guy who does anything on Blue Sky about CS. Please, more people over there. It's very lonely. It's me and like 10 people who have conversations about Counter-Strike things. So I'll probably reply to you if you message me on Blue Sky because there's no one there. Yeah, I'm going to try and get back into the streaming thing. So follow the Twitch. There will be some more stuff coming that way. And yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It's been cool to see you working, to see you building this thing up, to doing these interviews. I enjoy checking them out, and cool to see you at Fort Worth, man. It was awesome to see you in person.
Yeah, it was great. And I mean, I not to snub anyone else that I've met from the industry in the past, but probably my most meaningful, interaction with meeting someone for the first time, with how everything played out, with getting off the plane and then seeing the clip of you mentioning the pot. Like, dude, I was like, man, I need to find this guy ASAP. That was crazy.
Man, I respect the hustle. I respect the grind. I know, this stuff takes a lot of work. Just shit, organizing people, getting people on a calendar is like practically a full-time job in esports. So yeah, no, I respect it. I respect what you're doing, and it's cool to see somebody making something.
Alrighty, everybody, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the Halftime with K Busy podcast. It's really crazy to think that we are getting close to 100 episodes, and it's been 2 years and like almost 2 months of doing this, so it's kind of crazy. I know we've missed a couple weeks and stuff like that, but for the most part, we've been doing them every single Friday for like over 2 years at this point, so it's pretty crazy. And for the people, even if you're new to the channel or if you've been following since the beginning, love you guys, man. Thank you very much for the support. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode with DarfMike. His links are in the description, so make sure you go follow him. And yeah, really good talk, and I imagine we'll have him back on in the future. But that is going to be it for today's episode. So don't forget to like the video, comment down below, subscribe, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well if you're not watching on YouTube. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next week with another episode. Till next time, everybody. Peace.